A Christmas Carol. Scene 1. Scrooge had once been a proud and successful man. He ran a large business together with his partner Jacob Marley. Together they had made lots of money, and they would spend that on themselves in a carefree way, partying, gambling, and drinking without a care in the world. But just as quickly as their world was flashing by, Marley had died. Scrooge was suddenly on his own and devastated. Instead of turning to his friends for support, Scrooge turned in on himself and he started to hate everything. He refused to give money to two men seeking donations for the poor. He refused to go to dinner with his nephew, and above all, he hated Christmas. So here we find him on an ice-cold Christmas Eve in London, looking out over the frozen River Thames at the bleak mist that has formed on the water. He is sad and alone. The scene of melancholy is interrupted by the approach of his long-serving employee, Bob Cratchit. Bob has been loyal to Scrooge and has stuck by him through the years, watching him become ever more depressed and angry. Bob is a simple man. He doesn't get involved in the complexities of life. His only wish is to look after his family. And so, meekly, he asks Scrooge whether he'd be able to take Christmas Day off so that he can watch his children open their presents and so he can eat dinner with his family on Christmas Day. But Scrooge reacts with vehement anger, the pain of the last 7 years coming together at once. How dare Cratchit ask for time off to enjoy himself? He booms "No!" at him, so loud the scene changes to Scrooge's house. Scrooge returns home and opens a large bottle of scotch to calm his nerves. He swallows his feelings by eating a large banquet dinner on his own. And finally, he retires to bed, full. However, just as he's falling asleep, something startles him. Something is moving in his room. Maybe a mouse? He reaches under the bed for a slipper to hit it with. But as he rises, he is confronted with a deathly apparition. Marley. At first, Scrooge thinks that this is a dream. Maybe he had one drink too many, or maybe his rich food has caused him indigestion. But Marley convinces him that this is quite real. Marley is now a ghost. He explains that he will wander the earth through all eternity. But he is not free. He's weighed down by these heavy chains that impede him at every step. The chains were formed in his lifetime. Each link in the chain represents a moment of greed or an act of selfishness. Marley implores Scrooge not to end up like him. Scrooge has a single chance to avoid the same fate, and so he listens intently to Marley. Tonight, you will be visited by 3 spirits. Listen to them. If you choose not to listen, your fate will be to carry much heavier chains of your own. Scene 2. The Ghost of Christmas Past. Scrooge falls back to sleep, convincing himself that Marley's appearance was just a dream. But before long, he's awakened by the ghost of Christmas past. He is a curious figure, appearing to be young and sort of old at the same time, like a child, but also like a man. He carries a large cap in the shape of a candle extinguisher under his arm, and from the top of his head shines a bright light that illuminates Scrooge's memories like a projection on the wall. We look at the projection and we see a drab wood-panelled room with nothing on the walls. a long line of empty single beds. In the far bed is young Scrooge, on his own, far from his parents and with no friends. This is Scrooge's boarding school and his life as a child. This was a crushingly lonely time for him. It's the last day of term before Christmas, and into the room springs his beloved sister Fan, with whom he shared many happy times. She brings a ray of colour to the forlorn scene. He is joyful to see her again, but a tear falls from his eye as he remembers that she died many years ago. The scene from the projection changes to an office Christmas party. It's the office from Scrooge's first ever job, where he worked as an assistant. It's a wild scene of music, dancing, and drunken merriment. In the corner sits the boss, Mr. Fezziwig. Mr. Fezziwig adored Scrooge and treated him like a son. He taught him the ropes in business and exclaims, "You are gonna be the richest person in the world." This gave Scrooge great hope and endeavour. And Scrooge looks at the scene and smiles. The scene changes to reveal Belle. Belle is the love of his life. She's absolutely gorgeous. She is everything that he ever wanted. But in this scene, it's not a happy time. It's the day when Belle is seen gathering up her belongings and moving out, as she realizes that work and money are more important to Scrooge than she is. Scrooge has often thought about her through his life, and he misses her terribly. But he remembers that he's content that he made the right decision to focus on his business. In his opinion, there's no use having a family, but having no money. The projected scene quickly moves on again to see Belle sat around a Christmas table with her new family. Her new husband kisses her and she gives a big smile. Their young children are sat around opening their presents with screams of excitement, and a warm fire illuminates the room. It is a perfect picture of happiness. Scrooge feels a lump in his throat as he surveys the life that he could have had. But then his eyes are drawn to a calendar on the mantelpiece. The date shows that this was the Christmas that Jacob Marley died. Beset with emotion, Scrooge demands that the ghost returns him to his home. And just like that, the ghost is gone. Scene 3. In spite of all that had happened, Scrooge was still shaking his head, wondering if it all were true. It seemed very real, but was it? However, later that night, just as Marley had predicted, a second ghost appeared. This was the ghost of Christmas Present. He appears to Scrooge on a throne, surrounded by Christmas gifts. To Scrooge, he represents the personification of the Christmas spirit that he hates. As before, the ghost of Christmas Present used some kind of projection equipment to show scenes to Scrooge that would be meaningful to him. First, we see a large market hall selling all kinds of food and drink. Scrooge can see many people he knows merrily buying the ingredients for their Christmas dinner and for their Christmas celebrations. And the atmosphere is joyous. A brass band is in the corner playing classic Christmas songs, and many people are joining in. Deck the halls with boughs of holly. The scene quickly moves on to views of other people in the town celebrating Christmas. The miners in their cottage are decorating their own Christmas tree. And even the lonely lighthouse keeper is sat there staring out of his high window, looking up to see if he can see the Christmas angels. Scrooge sees the excitement on all their faces and can feel the joy in their hearts. He starts to see that the Christmas spirit can be experienced by anyone, maybe including him. And then we move to his loyal employee, Bob Cratchit's house. No longer are we seeing views of people who Scrooge vaguely knows and sees. This is someone very close to him, and who in different circumstances would be Scrooge's best friend. Bob and his family are making the best of things. They are decorating the room with what they can, and they are seeing if they have food left for a celebration on Christmas Day. Scrooge's eyes fall on Tiny Tim in the corner, their youngest child. Sadly, he looks thin and emaciated. The ghost of Christmas Present interrupts Scrooge's thought and tells him that Tiny Tim is seriously ill. He is underfed and malnourished. Unless things change, Tiny Tim will unfortunately pass away. Before disappearing, the spirit shows Scrooge one final image. It's of two hideous, starving children, named Ignorance and Want. Scrooge is worried about them, but the spirit just gives a mocking laugh. Ha 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 ha! As he disappears, he shouts, "Above all, beware of ignorance." Scrooge is now convinced that the ghosts and their visions are real, and he is terrified. But the worst is still to come. As he curls up on the floor in his dark room, a final ghost appears. The ghost of Christmas yet to come represents the future and a prediction of what may well come to pass. The ghost says no words. He is silent and simply points his finger ominously. The first image that Scrooge sees is the funeral of a disliked man. It is attended only by local businessmen. But these are not people who knew the deceased or liked the deceased. They have only attended on the condition that they are paid and that lunch is provided. Worse still, in the background, Scrooge can see that the staff of the disliked man, and his cleaner, and his laundry assistant, and even the undertaker himself, are all together stealing his possessions so that they can sell them to make some money. Scrooge is horrified at this scene. He can't understand why there is no dignity in this man's death. Surely he must have done some terrible things to bring this upon himself. Scrooge asks the spirit to show a single person who feels any emotion about his death. And the spirit shows him a poor couple who are rejoicing. This is because they needed to borrow from the disliked man, and his death will allow them more time to pay their money back and put the finances in order. Of course, Scrooge finds no solace in this. He asks whether anyone can show any tenderness. And for this, the ghost points to a scene showing Bob Cratchit and his family in tears, inconsolable. They are showing tenderness. They are mourning the premature death of Tiny Tim. In a darkened corner of the graveyard, is a neglected gravestone. The grave of the disliked man. The ghost points ominously at the name on the grave. Scrooge. Scene 5. Scrooge wakes up the next day, Christmas Day. Whilst he can still barely believe what's happened, he is a changed man, and he knows what he must do. So he gets dressed quickly and he runs into the street. He starts by making a large donation to the charity he rejected the previous day, and then he sends a great big turkey to the Cratchit home for Christmas dinner. But mind, he does this anonymously because he realizes that this is not about taking the credit for himself and rejoicing in himself, but what is important is that the Cratchits are able to share in the Christmas joy. He then spends the afternoon at Fred's Christmas party. But this time, he's not getting drunk and showing off, but he's taking time to talk to the people who he knows and learns to respect them and makes meaningful connections with them. The following day, Scrooge goes into work to find Bob Cratchit already at his desk. Scrooge realizes that he hasn't treated his only friend well at all, and decides to give Bob a big pay rise. He asks after Tiny Tim, as he wants to know about his health. He's worried because of the visions that he saw. And it turns out that Tiny Tim is now well and thriving. In the following years, Scrooge takes time to mentor Tiny Tim and show him the world of business. Scrooge becomes like a second father figure to him, and he teaches him all about how he made his money, but also about the importance of family. From then on, Scrooge treats everyone with kindness, generosity, and compassion. And finally, it is he who becomes the spirit of Christmas. The end.